Adam Meister, it is so good to have you in the parlor. And I must ask you about your costuming. Why do you have lettering on your shirt?
Well, first off, thank you for welcoming me to your beautiful parlor. This shirt, I sometimes like to wear shirts that represent aspects of my life that I believe in a great deal, that I love. And I'm wearing a shirt that lists cryptocurrencies. And this is a type of digital money. And my favorite cryptocurrency is the one on top, Bitcoin.
Are cryptocurrencies like the things that spies use?
No, they're more like digital money. Like a dollar bill sent from a computer to a computer.
A computer, what is that?
A computer, well, it's a futuristic machine that thinks for us and makes our lives easier and allows us to send information from one point to another very fast.
Kind of like the post.
Yes, kind of like the post.
Well, tell me more about the cryptocurrency. I see the one at the top is called Bitcoin.
Well, yes, Bitcoin is a form of money, currency, but you can't touch the Bitcoin like you can touch your dollar bill or your gold. But it's still a store of value, just like gold. And it can be sent anywhere in the world, and no person controls it.
No person controls it. How is that possible? In other words, one of the states didn't issue Bitcoin.
No, this is private money, privately produced money.
Oh, like a merchant who would make script for people who come into his general store.
Well, it's that same line of thinking. It's a type of currency that does not rely on a government. There's no fiat involved. It is it's computers sending information to one another. It's a string of numbers that represent a unique string of numbers, should we say, that differentiates it from other strings of numbers.
Now, these strings of numbers, once they get from one place to another, is that just something you say, you're 1358888 and I'm 7684456, or how does this work?
Well, yeah, it's basically like that. It's from something called blockchain technology.
Blockchain, as in a ship?
Well, no, it's not a ship. It's a big database of all of the transactions that have ever been made with Bitcoin. So we know that this is the real Bitcoin. This piece of information that I'm sending you is not fake. That it is not what's the word I'm looking for? Forged. Money.
It's not made by a blacksmith.
Yes, it's not. Yes, it is the real. It's the real deal. It's the real money that you're expecting to get, because you can't just make this up. You can't just make, with dollar bills you could fake dollar bills, and you wouldn't know what's real and what's not. Counterfeit is the word I'm searching for.
Ah.
Yes.
Counterfeit, kind of like the Muslims in North Africa, the Barbary pirates.
Yeah, this is but the thing is, the Barbary pirates we could send them this over if they had a computer, they would be able to receive this digital currency. That is the beauty.
So wouldn't they want to take it if they're pirates?
Yes.
How would they take it?
If they knew your private key, they would be able to take your Bitcoin. But you have to keep your private key secure. So you never tell anyone your string of numbers. You send your Bitcoin from one public string of numbers to another public string of numbers. But you never tell anyone your private string of numbers, or else you're going to be robbed.
Ah, so it's like a The key you keep very, very much around your neck or something like that.
Yes, you have to store your Bitcoin in a very special location. Not you can't depend on a third party. You store your gold in the bank, right? In the vault.
No, I wouldn't trust a bank to keep my gold.
Well, that's the thing. In the digital money, fans of digital money, fans of cryptocurrency, people who believe in that, we don't trust third parties either. We control our private keys. We keep their keys around our necks. And one way of doing that is getting a hardware wallet. You're familiar with a wallet, right?
Like a purse.
A purse, a hardware. We have tiny little purses. My purse is called a Trésor, and it stores my Bitcoin private key on it. Now, again, there are other digital currencies out there too, listed on my shirt: Litecoin, Decred, Monero. They all do different things. They all have different attributes. But Bitcoin was the first one and is the most popular one. And it's worth a lot in terms of United States dollars right now, too.
Now, where did the Bitcoin originate?
A person named Satoshi Nakamoto created it in the late 2000s, the previous decade that I'm familiar with, at least. And we don't know who this person is. It sounds like a Japanese man. The name, if you're familiar with that part of the world, you said you were familiar with the Barbary Pirates, so I assume you're a worldly man.
So this is an Asiatic coin.
Well, that's the thing. He is using a name, but we don't know who. We don't know what he looks like, and we don't know if it's a man or a woman or a group of people. It's someone who doesn't want to be known, and that's very interesting because many people who use cryptocurrencies, they value being anonymous also. They value keeping themselves in private. This is about security and privacy and not having the government infringe upon our value and our currency. Perhaps you're familiar with that type of thing. Rebels against the government, I guess.
Oh, of course, of course. And that makes total sense to me. In fact, it was the Stamp Act, King George wanting to take his portion of every official document that would be writ, that it caused us to get very upset with him to begin with. It was many things like that, but the usurpation of your right to privacy with money and property, I think, is one of the most important things that we can keep from Locke's Leviathan.
I agree. And I find that private money is the answer. And this is the perfection of private money right here.
Well, in the Constitution, there is no mention of the federal government having the power to create money. And I think deliberately so. I think it's those states that are part of these United States ought to have the right to supervise their own currency. And even a general store should be allowed to make its own script. And the value of that script is, of course, determined by the public, which accepts it or doesn't accept it. I'm sure Bitcoin must work the same way.
Yes, and since your time, there has been a criminalization almost of cash. One becomes a suspect and almost branded as a criminal if they use cash, if the government cannot track what you're doing. And it is unfortunate it has come to this, but this helps the common citizen avoid that, avoid being tracked with using the government. The government is trying to get people into their own form of digital currency. We have credit cards now. We have ways that banks can keep track of people. But once one goes into cash, it is harder to keep track of a person. And digital cash, again, is the perfection of cash.
Why would you want to keep track of a person?
So you can control a person, so you can tax a person. That is why the governments like to keep track of people's money. And, control, definitely control, because they can say, well, you did something we didn't like with your money. We can take away your money now. But again, when you are into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, if you control your private key, it cannot be taken from you by the government or turned off by the government.
Can't you put gold or silver in your purse and use that as a medium of exchange?
Yes, but it's not very convenient. It's hard to lug around a bunch of gold. And if one tries to take gold across the border into Canada, let's say, they will become a suspect and they may be arrested. They will probably not be allowed to take their gold. It is not easy to travel with gold in this modern world.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, that is the world we live in. The government has become very powerful here in this century. It is almost a repeat of the times of old, of the 18th century, when we rebelled. And now we, the people, I feel, are rebelling peacefully this time through digital currency against the private banks and against the federal government, but peacefully and respectfully. And I think that those entities should be respectful of this new private enterprise and take it in stride. I can hope they take it in stride, but some say that the government and certain entities will not be very happy with what's going on and will try to stop Bitcoin. And there are signs out there that there are people trying to stop this Bitcoin revolution.
Well, it seems to me that the Bitcoins and their exchange are much like smugglers. What is the actual mechanism for purchasing a Bitcoin?
Well, one has to get onto their computer. Well, there are two options. One can meet a person face to face and exchange Bitcoin for cash. But one can also go to a digital exchange on your computer via the internet and purchase Bitcoin there, such as Coinbase.com. That's depending on a third party. And if one goes through a digital exchange, a record will be kept that you purchased Bitcoin. If you meet a person in person, there will be no record that you purchased that Bitcoin if you give them cash. So you will be off the grid with your Bitcoin under those circumstances. But for convenience sake, it is easier to buy your Bitcoin at a digital exchange on the internet, such as Coinbase.com here in the United States.
You would think there would be a marketplace where people could physically meet up and exchange the information, the key for the cash. Have there been places that have been designated, much as exchanges of stock?
Well, there is a place called localbitcoins.com on the internet where one can arrange such meetings. So these informal meetings do pop up here and there and are organized online where such things take place.
Is there any protection that if you receive the digital information that is the private key for the Bitcoin and you give them cash at a meetup of this sort, that you would actually be guaranteed that you'd be receiving that Bitcoin, or could you fake the key?
There are ways to confirm this, actually. It would be, you would tell the person to send it to your public address, and you would then check on the blockchain explorer to see if the transaction actually went through. And once there were 3 confirmations, you would be sure that it was really sent and that it was really Bitcoin.
And that can happen in real time when you're actually sitting there in a face-to-face meeting with this person?
Yes, it can. Yes, it can.
Now, is there any sort of association with like evil on the part of the government? Does the government look at these transactions as a transaction between smuggler and private party?
Sometimes the government is a little paranoid and feels that these type of transactions are helping people trade drugs, and they try to associate Bitcoin and cryptocurrency with drugs and other illegal activities like prostitution. So, and they worry. The government worries too much, so they would like to regulate certain aspects of the selling and the transactions of Bitcoin. And again, they will be able to regulate certain aspects through the third parties, through these exchanges online, but they won't be able to regulate individuals selling it between each other in their private homes per se, or just meeting up. But the government does try to vilify Bitcoin, at least some aspects of the government. Again, I ask and I hope that the government does not take that track to vilify Bitcoin, because it will only make it more popular. Indeed, there are people who use it for drugs and prostitution, those type of transactions. But people
I don't understand this illegal thing with drugs. No one has passed a law against anything in the pharmacopoeia.
Well, here in this world that I'm familiar with, the United States government has made many drugs that may not hurt people, that people choose to use on their own, to put into their own bodies. They've chosen to make them illegal.
How do you equate this with money? It doesn't make sense whatsoever. Can't you just go to your apothecary and buy drugs?
Yes, and you can use the United States cash to buy these drugs also, from individuals or from legally registered drugs at your apothecary. But the point is...
legally registered drugs? There are no legally registered drugs. Why would anyone want to control a substance like a drug?
Well, the government, some say the government has major overreach right now. They like to, again, it's about controlling the individual. The government has put its hand into many aspects of our life that you might be shocked at. But I will say this, that if the government says that digital currency is being used for these so-called nefarious acts, they have to realize that their own currency, their cash, their credit cards are being used for these things too. So to vilify digital currency is, I'd say, a weak reasoning, and that the government should step away. They should step away from their regulation, and they should step away from their interest in digital currency. The more they fight it, the harder it's going to be in the long run for them, the bigger the fall. They should embrace it. And if they invest in the Bitcoin now, our government has a lot of gold, apparently.
When you say our government, you're talking about the federal government?
Yes, I'm sorry not to clarify that.
Nothing in the Constitution allows the federal government to issue money. It would have to be issued by a private corporation.
That is true. I get confused sometimes. There's a private corporation called the Federal Reserve. Because it has the name federal in it, I say it's the government, but it's not. It actually isn't. The Federal Reserve is the one behind our country's money, actually. It's hard to explain. I know. It's different than what you might be familiar with.
And so a private corporation known as the Federal Reserve controls the money of the government, while at the same time the government uses the term federal.
Yes.
That seems like a contradiction. It doesn't, I don't understand this conundrum.
It's very confusing. It's very confusing. And that's why I tell people not to worry about these type of things, and not to worry about the government, just to exit this circle of control by getting into cryptocurrency.
This is making more sense now. I understand why you would want to own Bitcoin. And it gives you an alternative means of exchanging value that is separate from the control of either the private corporation known as the Federal Reserve or the federal government itself.
Those are centralized entities. Bitcoin is decentralized. No one entity can shut it down. No one entity controls it. It is stored on computers. All records of all the Bitcoin transactions ever made are stored on computers all over the world.
And these transactions are all made automatic, like some sort of mechanical man.
Yes, the blockchain, as we spoke of before.
Now, the blockchain, you said that works by a record of all the transactions that have ever occurred with this?
Yes.
This is sounding more like the lines that control the sails on a ship. And so you've got all these different lines going into a blockchain, which causes the cryptographic control of Bitcoin?
Yes, yes, your analogy is strong there. It is, it's basically can be explained like that. It's, I would, you know, I'm not familiar with ships per se, so it's difficult for me to totally expand upon that analogy. But again, we must remember that Bitcoin, it is decentralized. No one man can stop it. No one government can stop it.
So how would I take my gold and put it into Bitcoin if I wanted to do that?
How would one change one's gold into Bitcoin?
Right.
Exchange? Well, there are actually companies where you can purchase gold with Bitcoin, but there are people out there who would definitely take your gold and give you Bitcoin. There are many, in this day and age, there are many people who are fans of metals, gold and silver. And some of those same people, because of their belief in freedom and the government not getting into their personal matters, are also interested in cryptocurrency. So there's a very interesting overlap, and I'm glad you brought that up. There are many people out there who are interested in both, who would love to exchange one older form of currency for the newer one.
Well, we should talk about this more. Please, let's continue this conversation.
Well, if people would like to continue this conversation, who might be overhearing this conversation, you can contact me at adam@tresorhelp.com. You can go to my website, disruptmeister.com, and I have my own video show on a computer called the Bitcoin Meister Show. And you can just use Google to look up Bitcoin Meister online, and you will find my YouTube show.
Adam Meister, it is wondrous for you to have been here, and I toast to your success.
Thank you. Your home is lovely, and it has been a pleasure.